was just 5 days ago that allegations appeared in the Globe and Mail that the Prime Minister's office had pressed Jody Wilson-Raybould to intervene in a criminal case involving SNC-Lavalin.
The allegations in the Globe story this morning are false.
The Prime Minister denied anyone in his office directed his then Attorney General to help the Quebec construction giant cut a plea deal and avoid a criminal trial on fraud and bribery charges.
I don't have any comment.
And were you pressured by PMO, ma'am? Anyone in PMO?
Instead of backing that up, Wilson-Raybould refused to say anything because of what she says is solicitor-client privilege.
I respect her view.
A day ago, Trudeau said he had full confidence in her, saying they had spoken twice in as many days.
In our system of government, of course, her presence in cabinet should actually speak for itself.
But last night, Wilson-Raybould resigned to the Prime Minister and today confirmed publicly, saying in a letter, "I am aware that many Canadians wish for me to speak on matters that have been in the media over the last week. I am in the process of obtaining advice on the topics that I'm legally permitted to discuss in this matter."
I am surprised and disappointed, and to be honest, don't entirely understand why Jody Wilson-Raybould made the decision she did.
Justin Trudeau is trying to hide the truth with regards to the SNC-Lavalin affair, and his handling of this latest scandal has thrown his government into chaos.
The SNC-Lavalin scandal that wasn't even a controversy a week ago has taken a dramatic turn. Jody Wilson-Raybould, as you saw there, quit Justin Trudeau's front bench. The Ethics Commissioner has now launched an investigation. What will her departure mean for the Liberal government, for Justin Trudeau? Time for a special Tuesday edition of At Issue. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal. Andrew Coyne is in Toronto. Althea Raj is in Ottawa. All of you get special points for braving the snowstorm. So let's start there with a big thank you for doing that. Let's start with whether you think this continues now and how big a threat or a danger, I guess, Jody Wilson-Raybould has become now that she is out of cabinet. Chantal.
I think I'd start by saying that for a lot of Canadians, the spectacle today was a sad spectacle, and it kind of is the day when publicly the Trudeau government lost its innocence. So much hope and so much symbol was vested in Jody Wilson-Raybould becoming the Minister of Justice, Indigenous woman, and now to see the story end in this way. The last time a story that was so close to the bone to a government and a resignation that came about was Lucien Bouchard leaving Brian Mulroney's government. The big difference is I've never read a resignation from a minister that did not give a cause for resigning. So we are a week later still into reading body language and reading silence. I think Ms. Wilson-Raybould worked herself into a box. Either she supported the version of the Prime Minister, or if she did not want to and wanted to eventually say, this is not what happened and I was pressured, then it would have come back to the question, then why did you not resign?
And what do you make, Andrew, of the Prime Minister's claim? And I mean, speak to whatever part you want here, but what did you make of the Prime Minister's claim today that if something was wrong, and if Jody Wilson-Raybould felt at any time something was wrong, she could have put her hand up and said it, and she didn't?
Well, this is a continuation of the strategy that has until now been pursued by his minions behind the scenes and off the record of trying to shift the focus and the blame onto her and have people asking questions about what did she do, what did she say, what did she know, rather than the original allegation, which was that people in his office pressured her to do something quite improper with regard to the prosecution of SNC-Lavalin. So it may or may not pay off for them, but significantly, we are now 5 days later, and we still have not had a direct denial from him on the record that he or his officials pressured her in this matter. Nobody thought to ask him that at this press conference, so he was allowed to get away with this continual attempt to shift the focus and the blame, but that's what's going on.
Althea.
Yeah, the word pressure is one of these words that seems like it can be interpreted in many ways by different people. And he has yet to answer whether or not his office tried to influence Jody Wilson-Raybould, and that she may have interpreted that as pressure, or the prosecution's office may have interpreted that as pressure. But the answer he gave today was clearly an attempt to shift the focus of the discussion to a totally irrelevant topic, in my view, which is not exactly what the allegations are about. And this government is really bad at crisis management. And again, this is one of these examples where the story keeps changing. So how do you believe the government? Even if you want to believe them, how do you believe them?
Let's be clear also about this question about what's pressure and what's just persuasion, et cetera. Public office holders have a higher obligation than merely obeying the law. They have an obligation to carry themselves in the manner that will withstand the closest scrutiny. There's the familiar language in that regard, which means you don't tiptoe up to the edge of these kinds of questions. All the lawyers that I've talked to on this say they should have not gone they should have stayed a million miles away from anything that could even be interpreted as pressure in such a matter as this, particularly with a company like SNC-Lavalin, particularly with the ties that they've had historically with the Liberal Party.
But she is allowed to consult her colleagues. So, the legislation gives her room to have discussions about these issues.
And a debate would be a normal thing, you would hope, at a cabinet table.
Yes.
Chantal, yeah.
Not only would you expect it, but the option to offer a deal to SNC-Lavalin, which came with conditions, is not only a legal option, but if it had been pursued, the government would have had to defend it. The minister would have had to make it public, and presumably the prime minister. It would have been a big decision. So it makes total sense that they would have been talking about this issue, and it would be a surprise and actually kind of remiss of the prime minister and his economic ministers to not look at all the options and explore them. So I understand all this about shifting the focus, and I don't disagree with Andrew on that, but at the end of the day, the only person who can give her take of these events has to be her. And so far, we have not heard a word one way or the other. We are reading body language, and I understand, and I read it the same way as everyone else.
Yes.
But there will be no light on this until she can speak.
Well, and then it's only still her version of what happened. Andrew,
yes, but still.
It's the missing part, for sure, Andrew.
There's a difference between canvassing advice from your cabinet colleagues, which is entirely within her ambit as Attorney General, and the Prime Minister's political staff laying the lumber on her, which is what the allegation was that originally set this story off. So for people to segue again into, well, if she's entitled to consult with her cabinet colleagues, is, I would submit, a little bit beside the point. The other thing is, the thing that makes it perfectly legal, and this is the other half of this whole affair, is this quickie bit of legislation that was inserted on the sly in the omnibus budget bill in 2018, custom designed and retroactively applied to make it easier for SNC-Lavalin to get out of criminal charges in this regard. That's at least as serious a matter, it seems to me, as whether or not there was pressure applied to take away the prosecutorial discretion in this matter.
Except that wasn't hidden. You know what I mean? Like, that was out there. So that's the difference, is it not?
One, it wasn't hidden. Two, it happened on her watch and she was the minister. And three, discussions to introduce that into the criminal code started when the Conservatives were in power. I don't, again, disagree with Andrew's read of the situation. I'm saying it's Andrew's read of the situation for now. That is a construct that so far we don't know. We can't know
then how
until
do
she talks.
Okay, so then let's assume that she will talk. I think the government is assuming she will speak. She will talk to the Supreme Court justice she's hired. She will decide in what capacity she can say more, if only for her reputation or whatever she has to say. How do we then understand at the end of the day, and I'll start with you, Andrew, what actually happened? Because this is still going to be two different versions of events, and I think we're all going to struggle to understand what happened and who do we believe and whether something was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the implication that the government would like to leave is either that she's confused about the meaning of pressure or that she's lying. And that was one of the subtexts of the Prime Minister's remarks today was there's this inconsistency. She didn't say anything to me, again, as if it was her fault. I agree with you that until and unless we get people speaking under oath, ideally perhaps in a committee hearing or with the Ethics Commissioner's investigation, it's going to be hard, but not impossible. A lot of these things do rest on that. But again, I come back to this point, is in 5 days, we still don't even have a direct denial from the Prime Minister on this question. That, it seems to me, is at least suggestive.
So Althea, in the next 5 days, I mean, this story could turn 15 times before then. What would you expect from the Prime Minister's office? That they will continue with this narrative, that they will knowingly let this sort of loose cannon former minister just be out there, never knowing when she's going to say something?
Well, I don't think they can control her. They can try to tell her that she's bound by solicitor-client privilege, which the Prime Minister said he's asked his new AG advice on. I think we're all going to be watching what happens at the committee tomorrow. What's interesting about that committee hearing is all the Liberals only have a slight majority, one person, and then the Liberal chair would have to vote. But all these individuals represent swing ridings that in 2011 were held by the Conservatives. And so these individuals will likely have to decide if they want to toe the PMO line and vote against having this sort of partisan show trial, or if they think it's better for their own electoral prospects to vote with the opposition. And so that's going to be very interesting to watch.
I'll end here, but the thing that I find perhaps most surprising is that clearly there was a feeling yesterday that things were okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And something happened between the press conference and when the two of them sat down and she said, finally, I'm not staying. And I don't understand how that could have been misread.
So misunderstood?
Could it be that when the Prime Minister asserted, speaking for her, that since she was in cabinet, that said it all?
I don't know.
Well, I read that transcript yesterday and thought, that sounds really unwise.
Yeah.
It's like going out on a limb and waiting for the person with the saw to saw off the branch.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully he got assurances from her that she intended to stay in cabinet before he went out and said something like that.
Last word to you, Andrew.
Well, his messaging, if I can say, has been off consistently through this. Usually that's because you don't have a very good story to tell when you have to come up with several over several days, and accidents happen as a result.
Okay, everybody, thank you. Thanks for coming in on a snowy Tuesday. I appreciate it. We're still going to have a regular At Issue panel on Thursday. I'm sure everyone's delighted to hear. It's true, the viewers are asking for you today, demanding you. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to the At Issue podcast. Look for it on any iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational.